Story 1. Realizing that the relationship you had with your supposed best friend meant more to you than it did to them. Story 2. Being the only friend when everyone around you starts marrying and having children, gradually having less time and energy for you. Story 3. Emotional childhood neglect can leave a lasting impact on an individual. As a child, you may feel alone and lonely without fully understanding why. Your environment may signal that you are not important, leading you to shrink and believe that your existence is a burden, making invisibility seem preferable. You may find it difficult to compare or relate to others, as their experiences are vastly different and they are developing emotional skills that you may not even recognize. Life can feel like a series of transactions, causing you to retreat into your own little universe. Loneliness may become a source of comfort, even though it can feel empty. Feeling empty inside may seem preferable to confronting the harsh reality of being neglected by those who are supposed to love you unconditionally. The consequences of this neglect are profound yet often invisible. Living becomes a task. Masking your true feelings is essential. Adapting to circumstances is necessary, and regulating others' emotions to feel safe becomes your goal. Your sense of self fades away as the distance from it becomes too great to provide comfort. Perpetual loneliness manifests as a self-defense mechanism in response to trauma experienced during your most vulnerable moments, when your brain was still developing. This unique form of loneliness is shaped by your experiences and the impact of neglect. Story 4. I realized that the friends I made in my early 20s are not the type of people I want to associate with now that I am nearly 30. I have put in a lot of effort into personal transformation and no longer resonate with my old friends' lifestyle. I feel like I am starting from scratch, and it has been a tough journey. Story 5. My mom died a little over 3 years ago. She was my biggest fan and cheerleader. She cared about me in a way no one else ever has or ever will. I miss her every day, and I am finally willing to entertain the idea of something else, if only so I can see her again someday. Story 6. When my dog had to be put to sleep, I came home from the animal hospital without him, and the house felt empty. I went into the backyard, saw his water dish still half filled with water, and broke down crying. Story 7. Being surrounded by people you love and who love you, yet still feeling alone, is a common experience. If you feel this way, know that you are not alone and what you are experiencing is not uncommon. Hang in there. It can be overcome. Story 8. The feeling of isolation that comes with immigration. Living in your homeland is like being in a pool where the water temperature matches your body's temperature perfectly. You never notice being in the water. In contrast, living in another country is like being in water that is always a bit different from your body's temperature, making you constantly aware of it. Story 9. Filling out a form that asks for an emergency contact and finding no one to fill that box is challenging. Even worse, the person accepting the form just marked "not applicable" and moved on, indicating that I am not alone in this situation. There must be many people in similar circumstances. What does it mean when individuals literally do not have someone to call in an emergency aside from emergency services? Story 10. Living alone for multiple years as an introvert, I do have friends that I occasionally meet. I live in a big city, Berlin, but in my daily life, I am mostly by myself. I observe my friends around me engaging in numerous activities and spending time together. Personally, I have learned to embrace my solitude and create my own little adventures. However, it can still feel lonely at times, especially since I cannot have pets due to the size of my flat. Story 11. When a parent is ill and you don't have siblings to share the worry, burden, stress, and logistics with. Story 12. When each of my parents passed away, the last 5 years since losing my father have been really hard, especially since some family members showed their true colors and I had to go no contact for my own well-being. Story 13. Losing a spouse is incredibly challenging. I anticipated some loneliness, but I did not expect its severity. It is completely devastating. Story 14. The pain of realizing that none of your friends actually care about you. I have been chasing after them for years, only to realize that once I get out of breath and fall to my knees, they just keep walking without even taking one last glance at me. Story 15. Childhood abuse, for multiple reasons, was not something I could discuss with friends or even other family members. I never wanted to speak ill of my parents, but I also felt desperate to be understood and supported by someone. Anyone. Really. Most of my friends growing up had much healthier upbringings and relationships with their parents, so I struggled to relate to them. Even now, I feel that my priorities, perspectives, and judgment on many matters differ considerably from most people I meet, simply because of the profound impact my childhood had on me. I am grateful that my experiences have allowed me the opportunity to connect with nearly everyone I have met on some intrinsic level, but there are very few individuals with whom I could truly connect on a deeply intimate level. However, I like to think that with loneliness and some fortune comes a lot of gratitude. The relationships I am fortunate to have are the ones I cherish and revere deeply. Each day presents an opportunity to pay it forward somehow, to help those I know feel less alone, and empower them to find meaning in their own lives, despite any pain and loneliness. Story 16. There is a significant gap between me and my siblings. I was a change of life baby. My parents were tired of being parents when I was in elementary school, so they stopped participating in school events or parent-teacher nights. I received no guidance in deciding what to do after high school. Both my parents have passed away. The parents my siblings remember and celebrate were not the parents who raised me. This makes me feel lonely because it sometimes makes it difficult to connect with my siblings and also makes me miss the parents I could have had. Story 17. Loneliness from being in the wrong relationship with the wrong person is profound. After the breakup, I felt relief for the first 3 months, but I also felt lonely. I realized that the loneliness I was experiencing was the same feeling I had during the last few years of the relationship. Story 18. I always thought being lonely meant you didn't have anyone around you, but once I felt lonely even with my friends, that's when I understood what it actually means. Story 19. Losing your sister is difficult. You expect to grow old together. We used to joke about being pensioners and what we would do when we retire. Story 20. The loneliness that depression brings can be overwhelming. You may be surrounded by family, talk with good friends several times a day, and have a wonderful significant other. Yet by the end of the day, you still feel as though you were swimming in a sea of loneliness with no one around. Story 21. When I first lived truly alone, without parents, roommates, friends over all the time like in college, or a partner, I realized there was no one to verbalize my thoughts to throughout the day. You don't realize how many little things you say to someone in a back-and-forth manner, things that aren't important or interesting enough to text or call someone about. For example, the temperature is dropping. I might need to bring the plants in. Or, these chips are a lot spicier than I thought. I find myself doing this a lot, and it's tough not having that daily interaction. However, overall, I'm happy living alone. It was just an adjustment. Having pets to talk to helps. Story 22. Knowing that my dad was gone, and that I couldn't just show up on his doorstep if I was in trouble feels like being a boat adrift in the ocean. My anchor unattached and sinking into the darkness, further and further away from me. Story 23. Losing my parents and only sibling has been difficult. When I want to share family memories with someone, there is no one to share them with. I have been happily married for over 35 years, but I still feel alone at times. Story 24. To be rejected by friends repeatedly, and to feel lonely, miserable, unwanted, and misunderstood in their company is challenging. I love people and feel energized by their company. My usual thought when meeting someone is, could we be friends? If not today, I'll try again next time. These days, I am unlearning my ingrained people-pleasing tendencies and trying to manage my pessimism about others. But it's tough. I thought I belonged with them, but apparently that is not the case. I often feel a step behind, even when I try to move forward. However, perhaps that is my serendipity. I have found people I truly resonate with who return the energy, affection, and understanding I also offer. So even if it hurt in the past and still stings now, it is not a lost cause. People are not a lost cause, and I am not a lost cause. For every hurtful memory, there will always be a hug I can give and receive in the future. Story 25. I didn't expect losing my dad this year to hit so hard. My mom passed away when I was 11, so I have been without one parent for quite some time. I am now 40. Losing him affected me more than I anticipated. Not having parents is just different. I know others have it worse, and I feel selfish for even saying this, but it really hurts. Story 26. The first day after a lifelong pet dies is difficult. They heard all the secrets, rants, good news and bad news, and then they are just gone. Story 27. Raising a child without parents, extended family, their other parent, or any support. I will always be the only one who has joy in their wins and grieves with them when they lose. If they need a hug or advice, I'm the only adult they have. If I need help, I have to pay for it. If I want to be home with them and give them the world, my body has to pay for it in ways that further isolate me both emotionally and socially. But being a mother is still a privilege, and I will keep doing whatever it takes. I truly wish anyone else was ever here to help or to help me love them. Story 28. Grieving. Nobody knows what to do or say, so they do nothing at all. It truly opened my eyes, and going through it alone was difficult. Story 29. My partner of 11 years cheated and broke up with me. I had nowhere to go and had to keep living in our home until I found something, which took months. I had to watch as his relationship grew, seeing him leave me for her and do the things I had been begging for throughout our entire relationship. It was truly the worst thing that has ever happened to me, and I haven't had the easiest life. Meanwhile, he was still telling me he loved me, still wanting to be a family, and didn't want me to move out. He asked me to sleep next to him when he wasn't with her. Those nights he was gone were gut-wrenching, agonizing, and traumatic, and I wouldn't wish them on my worst enemy. I apologize for venting. Story 30. A woman turning 30 this year left a horrible, abusive relationship with a narcissist last year. She has no family, as both parents are deceased, and she just lost her job. Without a husband or children, she struggles to trust others after her experiences. Life changes when you realize people like that exist. During the relationship, she took selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors because she thought the issues were her fault. Now, she finds it difficult to be intimate with another person as she once could. Mental illness has created a disconnect from others. She hasn't truly enjoyed life in a while and has not wanted to be here for some time. Story 31. Regularly not hearing your own name, or anyone contacting you individually for a week despite being at work, is heartbreaking and can lead to depression. After 2 weeks, your desire for social interaction grows, but your social skills begin to decline rapidly. Story 32. When both parents are deceased, the unsettling truth is that you are now without the individuals who brought you into the world. Story 33. There is an incredible feeling when you walk into a jail cell for the first time. The door closes, you sit on your bunk, and look out the window. You see the world happening, but you are outside of it. People live normal lives right outside, while you feel trapped in a concrete box. Feels like time is passing while you remain still. It is depressing and alienating. Even if you are in a group of other inmates, that moment can feel like pure and total loneliness. Story 34. Leaving a high-control, authoritarian religious group that shaped your worldview from childhood and dictated how you should spend your time through coercive social pressure and strict rules about dress, grooming, behavior, and relationships. The loneliness you experience after breaking away from such a group, as a young adult with a distorted perspective on the world, is compounded by the difficulty of maintaining family ties, as your entire social network and family remain involved in that environment. This loneliness can persist for decades. Story 35. A marriage that feels more like a fading friendship. You are still with them all the time, but you feel very alone. Story 36. Losing a pet is incredibly painful. I wake up every day missing my beloved dog. The first few weeks were the loneliest I have ever experienced. I miss him daily. It has been 3 years, and my heart remains shattered. Story 37. I am married and love my husband more than I have ever loved any man. Recently, I realized that he doesn't love me beyond a superficial level. I feel useful like a kitchen toaster. He doesn't cherish or adore me. I am here because I am kind, loving, tender-hearted, disciplined, and reliable, but not because he is madly in love with me. He chose me for stability and safety, not for love. It will break my heart to leave, and it hurts more every day that I stay. Story 38. Being child-free and not by choice can be challenging. This experience is not for the weak, as friends and family often forget to include those who are child-free in birthday parties, outings, and vacations. Story 39. Realizing my family never loved me, but merely tolerated me for the abstract idea of family often translated into being used for favors, which felt a lot like love. Then, I went on to have a mutually loving relationship based on reciprocity with someone who cared about my thoughts and feelings and did not ridicule me for them. That was a gut punch like no other. Story 40. My ex cheated on me with my best friend, and all our mutual friends knew about it but didn't tell me. As a result, I lost nearly all my friends and my boyfriend in the same day. I've also gone back to school in my late 20s to earn my bachelor's degree. There is an overwhelming sense of not quite fitting in, like I am a puzzle piece but the picture I am trying to fit into is the wrong one. I observe all the other pieces fitting together, and not only can I not fit, but I do not even belong to that picture. It's hard to describe, but there is something fundamentally incompatible about being surrounded by people whose lives do not match mine. I feel both too late and too early, always outside of where I should be. Story 41. There is something about being sick in a hospital and not having your spouse allowed to be with you. You feel terrible, scared, and all alone. It is awful. Story 42. Lying in the intensive care unit bed, connected to noisy machines, unable to stand, eat, or mostly sleep, and heavily medicated. I am allowed only 5 minutes of visitation each day while rapidly losing my mind. I haven't attempted to crawl out of the window only because I physically cannot. Story 43. The kind that occurs when you're lonely in a relationship. It's excruciating and feels totally inescapable, as if it's your fault. Story 44. Not having any family or extended family has left me feeling isolated. I am an only child raised by a single mother. My father was irresponsible and had other children, but he abandoned them as well. None of us have met in person. My grandparents passed away when I was still in school, and both my parents were gone before I turned 25. I am not close with my mother's siblings due to family conflicts, and I honestly couldn't recognize them if I saw them. I just don't have family. No cousins. No parents. No grandparents. My children do not have grandparents or aunts and uncles. I often receive invitations to holiday gatherings, but I haven't had my own family gathering, not counting my children, since my grandmother died over 25 years ago. Yes, we have chosen family and friends, but no one understands that I don't have those traditional relationships. I can't call my mother, grandmother, grandfather, or siblings because they don't exist. My children don't have cousins either. There is no one who is obligated to support us or care about us because we do not have family ties. It can be very isolating, especially during the holidays. No one remembers my childhood or my mother or grandmother. There is no one to share those memories or stories with. If I don't have a picture, it doesn't exist. If I don't remember it, it's gone. Story 45. I moved to a new city for a job. I did not know anyone there, and no one at work talked to me. I felt so lonely that it physically hurt. Story 46. Disability causes me to be bedbound. I was in lockdown before the pandemic and continue to be afterward. I have spent months and years communicating with only one person apart from medical professionals. Story 47. Recovering from surgery, I was half paralyzed and spent 3 weeks in the hospital. My ex-partner left me after the neurosurgeon said I would never recover. My family wouldn't stay with me, and at one point, my ex threatened me, leading to hospital security being notified. Many friends distanced themselves due to the sudden change. My parents asked me to come home with them, so I did. I was in my wheelchair for another month after that. At least 2 people I remember were texting me, demanding I give them oxycodone and acetaminophen, which I definitely didn't have. I refused to fill that prescription when I came home because I wanted to wait as long as possible before considering opioids. Sitting in a wheelchair at my parents' house after my marriage, in the home I was renting with all my friends gone, is a uniquely challenging situation. It will be 9 years this August, and I still haven't rebuilt my life. I live alone, and my family is several states away, so I miss out on holidays and birthdays. I am 31, and it feels like I will never have a life. It never truly began. It was dead on arrival. Story 48. After almost a decade of treating my behavioral issues and post-traumatic stress disorder, I have become relatively emotionally healthy, but I still have many unhealed individuals in my environment. Because I wasn't particularly well-adjusted, I gravitated towards friends, relationships, and work situations where everyone was like me. My main avenue for connection was engaging over dysfunctional thinking and behavior. Now that I don't have that internal world anymore, I find it hard to connect with people. I am mostly just trying to stay supportive, but even doing well and feeling good causes reactions in my family and friends. At the same time, the relativity of my situation complicates things. I am still not quite able to connect with healthy individuals. It's a complicated space, and I feel caught between things. Story 49. Being the first in the friend group to have children has changed my relationships. I no longer maintain friendships with them, even though some have also become parents. Story 50. Being alone in a foreign country for months, specifically Italy in my case, is challenging, especially when you are far from your usual in-person support network in the United States. We communicated through text and phone calls, but it wasn't the same. Story 51. Being postpartum and realizing how small your support network actually is. Don't get me wrong. I love spending every day with my baby, but I've never felt so lonely. Story 52. Just existing as an autistic or neurodivergent person, especially if you grew up undiagnosed, can feel isolating. You operate at a different wavelength than those around you, forced to learn to communicate on their terms rather than your own. Even when surrounded by family and friends, you may feel as if you have no real connections. You are often seen but not truly understood. You are heard but not genuinely listened to. Can be a profoundly lonely existence until you find your community. Story 53. How odd I can have all this inside me, and to you, it's just words. Once you feel these words, you've experienced one of the worst feelings on the planet. Nothing can put you so far apart from this world. Story 54. My best friend and cousin died in a car crash. We lived together in college. It was the first real home I ever had, and we both told each other it would be a home without slam doors. He was like my brother. We lived in a small adobe home that was old but cozy. When I drove home after he passed away in the hospital, I walked into our kitchen alone, and it felt so empty, like an endless tomb. There is a weight to losing someone you are so close to. It's impossibly strong. Even after years, you will see something you want to share with them and have to relive the realization that they are gone forever, over and over. Grief is unreal. It's truly a terrible thing. Please tell the people you love that you love them. Every hug is meaningful. Cherish the company of others. It is precious. Story 55. When a close coworker leaves for a new job, you go from spending hours together every day to avoid where that person was. I am dealing with that right now, and while I am so happy and proud of him for making the change, I am also really sad that I won't have him around anymore. Story 56. Being the sibling of a child with cancer can make you feel incredibly invisible, especially when your brother is facing death at the young age of 14. Story 57. Having your husband leave you because you did not give birth to a healthy baby was incredibly difficult. It was not my fault that I had a premature baby. Both of us would have died if he had not been delivered when he was. My ex-husband did not want to raise a child with significant medical needs. I left and became a single mother to a son who required extra care. It was lonelier than I ever thought possible. Story 58. Seeing everyone else move forward in life, especially those who are not deserving, while you remain stagnant and paralyzed by past experiences. Story 59. Perceived stagnation can be difficult, as you watch others move forward while you feel stuck in your own development. Seeing friends or peers graduate, start careers, or form families while you are still grappling with personal struggles, uncertainties, or delays can be particularly challenging. It is not just about physical isolation but also about emotional disconnection. The realization that your experiences and timelines do not align with those around you can create a sense of alienation that often intersects with feelings of self-doubt. Additionally, when people start using terms that are unfamiliar, it can be confusing. You may ask for clarification, but sometimes you do not receive an answer. This can lead to the frustration of needing to look up definitions elsewhere, only to find that the terms are not listed. In such situations, you might feel compelled to pretend you understand what others are saying, even when you do not. Story 60. When I get really angry and everyone says, "Oh, how cute," with that facial expression of looking at a kitten. Story 61. Living with someone who dislikes you can be much more painful and lonely than being alone. Story 62. Having chronic pain and a chronic illness can make me feel like I live on a different planet. I have friends, but my needs and lifestyle are vastly different from theirs. Story 63. Having a friend or family member leave the state and visiting once or twice a year at most can be challenging, especially when traveling for work frequently. Story 64. The isolation from a family that tolerated you only because your mother or grandmother was keeping everyone together. Story 65. When I lost my mom, I was hit with the realization that she was probably the last person who could love me unconditionally. It definitely makes me feel a bit lonely when I think about it. Story 66. Chronic illness can halt your progress in hobbies, friendships, relationships, and education, leaving you feeling left behind. Story 67. Leaving everything behind and moving to a new country is a significant change. You do not just move, you adapt to new cultures, laws, and rules. Everyone talks about how tough it is, but few mention how lonely it can sometimes feel. Story 68. I have everything I could ever want in a son. He is my pride and joy. It's just him and me, and it has been for a while now. I miss having a romantic relationship and friends. I miss human interaction like that. Story 69. I have experienced long periods of isolation at home both before and after COVID-19. While I empathize with everyone who went through quarantine, experiencing isolation outside of that comes with shame and depression that only a few people understand. Regardless of societal opinions, I will never look down on young adults with failure to launch syndrome, caregivers, individuals not in education, employment, or training, or those with agoraphobia. Another issue is substance abuse when it is not used socially and one is not surrounded by other addicts. The shame is heightened because there is no peer pressure to engage in it. It is simply your own mind that you struggle to resist, and no one can truly understand that. Story 70. Watching your body slowly decay from a young age due to chronic illness can be particularly hard, especially as you lose friendships when your ability to socialize diminishes. Story 71. Being in a relationship is something I never understood when people talked about it. Feeling alone in a crowd? Definitely. Feeling alone with your partner? That doesn't make sense. But it does. It is a learning experience. Story 72. I remember an old English teacher discussing days when you don't talk to anyone for 24 hours. As a shy, introverted person, it sounded like heaven. That first day it happened was something else. You suddenly realize how alone you are and how isolated you can become in life. I haven't had many days like that, but when they occur, it's still sobering. Story 73. I am an Iraq veteran who went through some intense war experiences. There are very few of us, whether Iraq or Afghanistan veterans, compared to World War II or Vietnam veterans. We are the only ones who know what war is like among our age group, Generation X and Millennials. I know of almost no one around me who has experienced the same thing. I did not understand how lonely going to war would be. Story 74. The loneliness of grief. After losing my ex-partner a few years ago, I realized how alone I felt. Not just from the loss, but also from the perception that no one could understand what I was going through. I wanted space to cry and be alone while simultaneously desiring the presence of others for comfort. I wanted to talk about my feelings, but it made me feel vulnerable when people brought it up. I disliked how people treated me differently and also felt that they didn't understand how fundamentally changed I had become. Some people distanced themselves because they felt uncomfortable discussing loss or believed I was no longer fun to be around. Ultimately, I think much of my loneliness stemmed from feeling misunderstood rather than from actual abandonment. However, that feeling of emptiness was something I had never experienced before. Story 75. There are a few significant experiences I can think of. Being surrounded by many people, yet everyone is focused on their own lives and not interested in hanging out or reaching out. Trying to start a romantic relationship with someone who suddenly shifts their attention to someone else. The loss of a parent. Some families can struggle to stay together afterwards. The end of a long-term friendship. It's difficult to forget someone who truly understood you, only to end up treating each other like strangers in public. Having to move to another country for a job, dealing with culture shock and everything that comes with it. While the locals may be friendly, it still doesn't feel like home, and you miss your favorite local spots. I'm sure I'll think of more experiences soon. Story 76. My child was born in early 2021, and my ex-partner experienced severe pre- and postnatal depression. As a first-time father trying to help her, it was challenging. I was fortunate to have an easy baby and 3 months off through shared parental leave, but those first few months were tough. Story 77. Getting divorced in a new city, thousands of miles from family and friends. For the first few months, I just paced and slept. Story 78. The kind of loneliness that hits hardest is when you are cherished and surrounded by people, yet feel like a spectator in your own life. It's like being at a party with a musty, forgotten corner in your heart, where everyone else seems to dance freely while you cling to silent walls, whispering stories of connection that no one hears. Story 79. I struggled with loneliness and lost touch with myself. As life progressed, I grew further away from who I was, just existing. I wouldn't wish this experience on anyone. However, life is looking up. I am sober, not just a dry drunk, and I am on good terms with my ex-wife. My kids are happy. For the first time in a long while, I have purpose and clarity. I am happy. Story 80. I emigrated to a new country. I quickly realized that I had no history with anyone I met. I knew no one, not a single soul. I was completely alone and, for that matter, lonely. What I accomplished in my home country meant nothing. I was a blank slate. That was 30 years ago. Today, things are different. I have a history here. But just when I start to become a little arrogant, I remind myself of the time when I was nobody to anyone. Story 81. When your husband, who was your best friend since high school and the father of your toddler and newborn, dies suddenly, it is incredibly challenging. I live in a small town filled with young, complete families. All our friends were mutual friends. Almost 4 years later, I still struggle with this profound sense of loneliness. Story 82. Being married to a person who is completely changed since having kids can be confusing, as it can make you feel lost about your own identity. Not being able to survive financially on our own also contributes to feeling trapped. Story 83. Just under 3 months ago, I had to put my 18-year-old cat down. I got her on my 4th birthday and I am now 22. The nights are really lonely without her. I have family and my girlfriend, but living alone has gone from being something exciting to now being a reminder of her absence. Story 84. Almost dying or going missing for 24 hours after telling people when you would be back. Finally getting out of the dangerous situation and turning your phone on to see that no one noticed. Wondering how long it would take until they did. Story 85. My husband passed away from cancer. 6 months later, my children were moving out of the house after graduating. I felt completely empty, but it really only got worse. After a childhood of emotional neglect and an adulthood of more of the same, albeit on a lesser scale, I finally stood up to my parents. They haven't spoken to me since and have been telling family members that we had a falling out because I called them names, which is not true. I got promoted at work the other day and had no one to share the news with. Sometimes I just don't know what all of this is for. Story 86. I have 2 challenges. 1. Living with a romantic partner with whom you can no longer connect. You cannot get what you need from them, but you cannot look elsewhere. Getting sick while living alone and being unable to call for help. At one point, when it got really bad, I seriously considered the possibility of dying alone in bed. Story 87. Destroying my marriage with my ex forced us to move to Germany, where I have lived for the past 10 years with no friends or family to support me while I take care of my son. I feel so much regret. Story 88. Being unloved and unlovable. I am 51 years old, with a dead bedroom, having cared for both my parents, who are now deceased. I earn the money while my husband has gradually reduced his work hours since our marriage. I organize everything and care for my nephews and nieces. Despite all that I do for others, I am never considered or cared for. I have been a teacher for 30 years, yet parents now speak to us as if we are worthless. There is no joy, no hope, and no love because I am a woman over 50, without children, feeling of no worth and no purpose in my existence unless I am serving someone else. Not one person seems to care about me. I feel as though I am already dead. Story 89. When you realize you cannot be vulnerable with the people you love the most, you sit across the table from them and still feel miles away. Story 90. Coming home from a long deployment where you were not allowed to go anywhere alone for safety. Sitting in an empty apartment and listening to the overwhelming sound of silence. Story 91. Losing data for a hobby project you've been working on for years can be devastating. It's difficult to explain to those who aren't focused on production how deeply this loss can affect you. Story 92. The first time you wake up in a world without one of your parents, she was always there until one day she wasn't. I didn't know how to live in a world without her. Story 93. Having a chronic illness and a disability can lead to depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Story 94. Realizing that you are no one's priority can be difficult to accept. It is perfectly reasonable for people to have commitments such as partners, spouses, and children that come first. However, when you spend a week alone without anyone checking in on you, and your friends cancel plans due to other important commitments, it can be a stark reminder of your isolation. If you have distanced yourself from your family due to past abuse, you may come to the unsettling realization that it could take a week for anyone to notice if you were to pass away, as no one is particularly paying attention to your well-being. Story 95. Having a baby and being alone with that baby day in and day out for months on end is a huge privilege, but it has also made me feel lonelier than ever. Story 96. Being a first-time parent with a newborn baby, even with supportive partners, family, friends, antenatal groups, and medical professionals, can feel overwhelming. Can feel like you are alone with this tiny, helpless baby. I wouldn't change a thing, but those challenges are tough. Story 97. Not having good parents. I wish I could call my mom and tell her about my life, share my experience of getting another pet or trying a new restaurant, but she is really bitter and not a fun person to talk to. I struggle with my weight as a woman with polycystic ovary syndrome, and weight loss has always been hard for me. Whenever I talk about food, I hear comments about my weight. I haven't even mentioned the 2 new pets I've adopted this past year, as she constantly asks if my current pets are on their last legs and keeps saying, "When they die, are you done with pets?" My dad is abusive and believes that hurting women and constantly cheating is love. I have caught him cheating twice and informed his girlfriend, who he cheated on while with my mom, yet they are still together, so that is her choice at this point. I had a terrible childhood, and he insists that everything he did was normal. I won't go into detail, but I promise you it wasn't. I have a friend who enjoys brunch dates with her mom, and her dad takes her shopping, like they genuinely love their child. Story 98. I'm not sure if it fits, but I have been struggling to differentiate between the memories and dreams of conversations I have had with a friend I rarely see. It's a strange feeling. Story 99. Having your parents pass away is difficult. I was in my 40s when this happened, and I truly miss them. I have wonderful children, lovely friends, and a great sister. However, that feeling of loneliness from my parents not being here anymore hits hard. Story 100. Being diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer is a heavy burden. Reading stories of other women's journeys to remission and about people making plans and goals for the future hits you hard. I didn't realize how disconnected I felt from life at first, and how much it affected my mental health. I withdrew from friends and family to cope with the thought that I may not see my 3 daughters reach adulthood. Story 101. Having no real-life friends, you ask an online friend if you can call them because you feel lonely. They tell you no because they prefer not to talk on the phone, even though you know they talk to other online friends on the phone. Story 102. If your spouse's addiction spirals out of control and their family not only refuses to help but actively enables them, it is a personal hell. Story 103. Moving away from my friends and family by over 1,000 miles to my husband's hometown has left me feeling completely ignored by everyone except my 2 children and my husband. I feel alienated because I am not white, my mother is a lesbian, I have dyed hair, and I am not a Christian. I do not have any friends here. All of my friends live about 1,000 miles away. Story 104. Living in a town hours away from friends and family, with only your coworkers for social interaction, can feel isolating. When you find yourself unemployed, you may go weeks without talking to someone face to face. You desperately try to find a job back home to be closer to your family, but even positions you are highly qualified for are rejecting you. You cannot afford to drive home to see friends or family, so you leave your apartment for only about an hour a week. Story 105. Always being your loved one's therapist or support whenever they are in need, while they ignore or minimize your problems when you need support. Story 106. I work in a remote camp for 2 weeks at a time. The lack of physical contact from others is disheartening. When I'm home, the first thing I do is hug my wife and kids. The physical isolation can be overwhelming at times, especially on tough days. I can imagine how it feels to live alone or be an elderly person who has lost a spouse. Go hug your grandparents. They probably need it. Story 107. Being physically disabled in an inaccessible city or town makes it difficult to make friends. Story 108. The pain of being a sensitive and intelligent person is the main reason you have trouble relating to others. Although being alone is often preferable, having a supportive social network can be very nice at times. Story 109. Being 35 and single with friends and family who are all married with children can feel isolating. No one, not even your parents, prioritizes you above anyone else. It doesn't matter how much you prioritize others. They often cannot do the same for you. The best you can do is be a guest in someone else's world for a little while before returning to your own, but your own feels empty and quiet. Story 110. Going into foster care at the age of 14 meant transitioning from living with siblings and parents to having none of them in the blink of an eye. The feeling of having no blood relatives, while it seems like everyone else has at least someone, is a cold experience. Story 111. Loneliness at the top. The higher you rise, the fewer people are on the same level. This means that sometimes you don't have anyone to speak to face who isn't a subordinate, so you have to maintain your distance. For example, in a military company, there are several hundred soldiers, some sergeants, a handful of officers, and only one commander. Story 112. Living alone and feeling isolated from others felt like being trapped in a quiet space where the silence grew heavier each day. It was as if the world kept moving while I stood still, longing for connection but unsure where to find it. Story 113. No phone service, no electricity, alone under a sleeping bag with absolutely nobody in any direction for hours. Story 114. Being a performer for events, you think you will be the life of the party, but you are actually just an addition to someone else's occasion. Everyone knows everyone, and you feel like a stranger. The attendees do not know you, and the staff at the venues do not know you either. If you have a band, it is better as you have a small group to stick with. However, I have never felt more alone during solo performances. Sometimes I drive 3 hours to the venue, set up, wait, perform on stage, eat by myself, and then drive home alone. It can be tough at times, especially when you don't feel your performance added anything to people's evenings. It can make you feel invisible. Not that I am complaining. It is an amazing job, but I had to realize that it is not your party, and you are rightly not the star of the evening, just a part of the event. Go get it done, come home. Story 115. Being a new mom is the loneliest I have ever felt. All the people who claimed they would be there simply are not. My relationship with myself and my husband has changed. We had 18 years together before our daughter was born. No one sees me as a whole individual anymore. Every day feels repetitive. It is lonely and bittersweet most days. Story 116. Losing my identical twin was incredibly difficult. Readjusting to life without him after being together for 34 years was a challenge. I'm doing well now. It feels more like starting a new book rather than continuing a series of sad chapters. Story 117. After my mom died, no one was there for me. No one checked on me, and no one showed up to my mom's memorial. Felt like no one cared. Story 118. I am an Army veteran. We always say we never leave anyone behind. Then, one day, I was left behind and had to figure out how to return on my own, with only one landmark as a reference. The worst part was that it was my immediate supervisor who did it. Plus, nobody even noticed I was gone. I confronted him about it, he denied it, and to this day swears it never happened. I lost all faith in them after that. Story 119. When both of my parents died within 2 weeks of each other, there was no silence in this world like that heard by an orphan. Story 120. Postpartum, 1 week in with significant baby blues, anxiety, and about 3 hours of interrupted sleep each night since giving birth. Story 121. One kind of loneliness I didn't realize existed until I felt it firsthand was the feeling of being surrounded by people yet still feeling alone. It's as if you're at a party, and everyone is chatting and laughing, but you're just there without truly engaging. Have you ever experienced that? No matter how much noise is around you, there is still a sense of emptiness. It's difficult to explain, but it almost feels like being invisible, even though you're physically present. Have you ever had one of those moments where you're in a group but still feel isolated? Story 122. Not having parents or grandparents to rely on can be difficult. I have no one older and wiser than me. No one who has my best interests in mind to turn to when I need advice for life's problems. There is no one to catch me if I fall or to celebrate my achievements. My mother struggles with addiction, and my father has been absent my entire life. My paternal grandparents have passed away, and my maternal grandparents enable my mother, so I do not communicate with them either. This world is hard to navigate on your own. Story 123. Having an invisible disability. I developed a chronic illness that ended my career and social life and contributed to the downfall of my marriage. Few people understand the things I cannot do, such as going to restaurants or shows, traveling, driving, or staying up past 9 p.m. It's very lonely. Story 124. This is a minor issue, but it made me feel a certain way. Getting into a hobby or interest that your spouse not only doesn't care about but actively dislikes. You can't discuss things you're passionate about with them, and it feels strangely rejecting. Story 125. Living alone was a challenge for me. My roommate, who was like a brother, went to prison last year. For the first time, I experienced solitude for a few months, and the silence and emptiness were overwhelming. Everyday activities, such as watching shows and having dinners together, became depressing. I missed the laughter we shared over things that normally brought us joy. Not being able to reach out to him when I needed help made it even harder. Living alone requires effort to socialize and have fun, as it is not something that happens automatically at home. Story 126. Stepping up to use your specific skills to help your friend in their most desperate hour of need, only for them to ignore everything you say and do because they see you as the joke of the group and always have. Story 127. I am an adult male married with children, both parents alive, on good terms with friends, and employed in a job that is not exploitative. However, I still feel alone and empty. Story 128. Being the first person in my group of friends to lose a parent, and then being the only person to lose both parents. Story 129. I am coming to Portugal. I thought it was the language barrier, but after learning the language, I felt completely ignored and always left hanging after starting a conversation. I learned how it feels to be in solitude for a long period of time, 4 years. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.